Greetings, brothers and sisters. Big video today. Lots of stuff to get into. I'll probably cover the Djokovic thing on my other channel today. But in terms of, I had a bad headache yesterday. You don't need to say anything about it. It's gone completely. But, it was just something where sometimes I get headaches where it's just so hard for me to be on the computer. And usually I can, work. And I was able to get a video done on my other channel yesterday morning. But after that, I just closed the computer up and I wasn't on it all day. And so some of this stuff is just built up. I wanted to make this video yesterday, but I just couldn't. I got a big thing to do on John Oliver at the end, which is about his just complete hypocrisy and cluelessness. A little JoJo Magoo update. John Stamos goofy on is being goofy on Bob Saget. And Kanye, of course, there's a whole Kanye thing going on and a little Britney Spears thing. So a lot more to get to today than usual. So let's start here. Alec Baldwin turns over his cell phone as part of the Rush shooting investigation. And I haven't really commented what I think happened. Like I have, my theory, what I think, based in, I don't know, I've covered Alec for about 3 years now, 2 years, I don't know what it is. Made a lot of videos on him the last couple of years and, have a good sense of his personality. And so let's go to that interview here with George Stephanopoulos. So, Alec was saying he was cooperating with the police, but he was waiting for New Mexico to go to New York and ask New York to make him turn over his cell phone because he lives in New York, right? And that's not cooperating. I mean, like I said, I understand why he doesn't want his cell phone. I mean, especially, him, like who knows what's on it, right? And so, some Hollywood person. And he doesn't want it turned over. I could see why that's the case, but that's not cooperating, right? And so let's go back to the original interview here. So Alec is talking to George Stephanopoulos, and he says this.
Well, how about that? Does that work? You see that? Do you see that? She goes, yeah, that's good. I let go of the hammer. Bang, the gun goes off.
Bang. Kablowie, it goes off.
I let go of the hammer. Bang, the gun goes off. She goes down. I thought to myself, did she faint?
And so this part of the interview where he says the gun goes off in his hand, and we know now that it fired a .45 caliber bullet, which carries a kick. Now, when I was a kid, we had these cap guns. Like I had this little small, like tiny silver gun. I mean, like it was an inch long. It wasn't a gun. It was a cap gun. It looked like a Western revolver, and you could put one of these little plastic caps in it. And then I had a revolver that had there was a round circular bunch of caps, and it would fit right in the revolver, and the handle of the revolver would fire the cap, right? It was just, a little kid's gun. And it was loud. Like, it would bother me now. Like, I would never give it to my kids, right? Just because of the noise of it. And, it makes a sound, and it's nothing like firing a real gun. If you fire a real gun, the, bullet, I mean, especially something with that kind of a kick, like a .45 caliber pistol, when you fired a gun. Like, it's something that, I mean, anybody who's gone to a shooting range or something like that, it's loud. I mean, it's really loud. It's really unpleasant to be there. It's so loud. It hurts your ears. Like, I wonder how, people who fire guns, you see this a lot in movies, and they have no earplugs in. They have no ear protection. And, in war or whatever it is, and they're firing, massive rifles and things, or just being around it hurts your ears, right? And the kick of the gun. Now, he just fired a bullet. I mean, listen to what he says here.
I thought to myself, did she faint?
Like, he just was holding a gun that went off, and he said, did she just faint? I mean, it's a lot. Did she just faint? There was a explosion in my hand, and I went, did she just faint? Right? Did she just faint? And so, like, it's just so bizarre, right? That he would come up with that kind of story. And then he says 45 minutes later, the slug they pulled out of, and there's another guy who There's a guy standing behind the cinematographer. The bullet goes through her into the director, and he's bleeding. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And he said 45 minutes later, a cop showed him the slug, and he was like stunned. Like, let's watch that part.
Disbelief over the idea. It was unacceptable, the idea that it was a live round.
He was in disbelief. He was in denial. He couldn't believe that there's a live round in the gun that just went off in his hand. He couldn't believe that the woman bleeding at his feet and the man bleeding behind her, that they'd been shot. It must be that she fainted or some such thing. I could not believe. I was in disbelief of the round that I just fired that came from a gun that exploded in my hand and the woman bleeding at my feet. It couldn't be that. Fainting, I said. It must be fainting. It had to be. What else could it be? She must have fainted.
And finally, one of the police officers at the conclusion of my interview, I was there for like an hour and a half or so, she takes her phone and she slides it across to me. She says, "That's what came out of Joel's shoulder."
You mean he didn't faint? There wasn't a mass fainting on the set? There was a shooting, are you saying?
A .45 caliber slug.
There was a slug, I say. A .45 caliber. I mean, he's just such a tool, right? Like, unbelievably playing himself here. And he said that he didn't know for 45 minutes until a cop showed him a picture. He's at a scene where there's a shooting, bleeding, and, a woman dying, and his director being hit. And he's like, I didn't know, because I couldn't believe it was. Someone would say it was a cold gun, and it wasn't a cold gun. But here's the other piece to it, right?
The gun is empty.
That's what cold gun means.
Well, cold gun means there's no charge in there. There could be dummy rounds.
So it's a cold gun. There could have been dummy rounds, right? So he says it could have been dummy rounds.
Yeah, they've showed a little bit lower, and she's getting me to position the gun. Everything is in her direction.
So this is just a little bit earlier in the interview, and he's saying, she's wanting him to position the gun.
The gun for this angle, and I draw the gun out, and I find a mark. I draw the gun out, I find a cut. And what's really urgent is the gun wasn't meant to be fired in that angle.
So, and she's saying to him, hold the gun here, hold the gun here. But he says that the gun wasn't meant to be fired, right? And so with Alec's personality, and he's such a narcissist, and I'm sure that he's like a complete ass on the set of these movies because he's got a fiery temper, right? We've seen him, there's videos out there where he slaps a photographer's camera. There was a time in New York where he had a dispute over parking, and he punched some old guy, like a 70-year-old guy. This is like 10 years ago. He called his daughter a pig, right? All these things. We see him going after the paparazzi, getting angry. We see him dismissing his wife. I mean, there's all these incidences, and I could show you the video. I'm not going to because I got other things to do today. It could be a long video. I'm just covering a little bit of this. But, Alec has a temper. He's incredibly narcissistic and egotistical, and he's a producer on this film, and he's got a lot more experience than this cinematographer. We know from this other video where I was showing you a scene from Entourage, which I watched a couple episodes with my wife. We're going to watch that show now because it's, documents the Hollywood culture in some way that isn't, glorifying it. But anyways, this was said at the end of that episode.
Good first day?
Real good.
Great. Maybe tomorrow you go get Christian Bale. We'll let him execute a cinematographer if he wants.
See you later.
And there was a story, someone left a comment that Christian Bale had a big thing, had a conflict with a cinematographer. Christian Bale has a similar personality, a fiery personality like Alec Baldwin, right? And so it is likely that the cinematographer pissed Alec Baldwin off, right? She didn't, she has power over him. That's what he's even saying in this interview. She's telling me, point the gun here, point the gun here.
Scene, I'm going to cock the gun. And I said, do you want to see that? And she said, yes. So I take the gun and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger.
So she's telling him what to do, directing him. And she, in his mind, has been beneath him because he's Alec Baldwin. She's a new cinematographer, and he's not only the star of the film, he's also a producer and her boss. And I bet that she irritated him a little bit. And he decided to, and again, speculation on my part. There's 100%, He decided to pull the trigger, pointing it at her, thinking there was a dummy round in it. Maybe he wanted to shock her or whatever. Maybe he thought it was a joke. or something like that. And he let the gun go off, right? Not let it, he made the gun go off. And there was a live bullet in there that he didn't know about, right? I mean, who knows? Like, maybe it didn't happen at all. Maybe this whole thing's made up. But in terms of his personality and, just things he said in the interview, I think he did it intentionally. I don't think he was, I think he thought there was a dummy round in there. But I bet he's done it before. I bet there's times where he's shot guns at people with dummy rounds at it. Like, there could be stories out there about him doing that. Maybe they'll come out later. Where, because it's, if you ever seen that episode of The Office where Michael Scott is in a improv, and every time, like, he does a scene, he ends up pulling a gun, right? Like, because it's just he's powerless in life. And so it's actually kind of a funny episode of The Office. And so, there's just something there. And I think maybe he did it intentionally, like he was irritated, whatever, thought it was a joke. And there was a live round in there. And, in this scene, like, the problem is that they weren't actually shooting, right? They weren't actually shooting, like Alec said. Like, Alec, there's a little montage I have of this. I'll play it here.
I'd light up a couple usually when I was working, because I'm so nervous when I'm shooting to get the job done. When I was shooting, or just stupid behavior. When I'm shooting.
They weren't actually filming, right? They were shooting, but they weren't filming. Alec was shooting, but he wasn't filming. This was just, they were staging and preparing. They were practicing, right? They were rehearsing for a scene, right? They were setting up the scene. They don't want to waste film. They have to get it right beforehand, right? They do this quite often, where they work out the various, like, angles of the camera, right? All these things. I mean, so they're preparing to film. Now, in the scene, he might have pulled the trigger, and so it would have been fine. If he was filming and he was supposed to pull the trigger, sure, it would have been fine. Oh, he's supposed to pull the trigger here. But he wasn't. And so he was just practicing. No reason for him to pull the trigger. So now it's like he's doubly screwed, right? If he was supposed to pull the trigger and they were filming and it was the scene, it was actually part of the movie, then it would have been different because it was scripted. He was, supposed to pull the trigger, right? But here he was just practicing, wasn't supposed to pull the trigger, and he did. He cocked the hammer back. His story's ridiculous. And, you either have to pull the trigger or, you have to pull the trigger, or you have to have the trigger already pulled and pull the hammer back and just let it go. It's one of the two things. Like, that's what happened with the gun. It just doesn't go off if you pull it back slightly. Like, they know that. Like, it's been documented by so many people who are expert on firearms that what he said was BS. And so that's where he is right now, right? And who knows what other incriminating evidence is out there. And, it's definitely possible that this would be a manslaughter charge because of that, right? Because, even if it's accidental, he did something here, and he was, whatever reason he had for it, if it was something where he was, just playing a joke, or was just, like, all right, I'm going to show this girl who has power here, right? Because she's telling him what to do. She's directing him. And she's a newbie into the, she's not a big-time cinematographer. She hasn't done a lot of big films and things. She's, doing this low-budget movie and working for Alec, right? So that's what I think happened. That he was, like, irritated. He decided to play, he was playing around. He pulled, it could be any number of things. I mean, I don't know. Like, this is just my, I'm throwing in my, 2 cents here. John Stamos says, private funeral for Bob Saget will be the hardest day of my life. What? That's the hardest day of your life? This guy was in and out of rehab, right? I mean, he didn't hit rock bottom, some of these days. I mean, divorced and the hardest day of his life. Like, how do you even know, right? Like, it's just, when there's these deaths, whether they're celebrity deaths or somebody dies and there's some outpouring on social media for the person, everybody says things about the person that they don't say, they maybe didn't even like the person in real life or whatever it was, right? I mean, there's just this fakeness to it. And there's all these celebrities who are heartbroken Bob Saget was such a wonderful guy, right? But John Stamos was one of the many Full House actors who ended up in rehab, right? I mean, he had like all these, various low levels in his life, but the hardest day is a funeral for a guy that you've known for 3 days has been, whatever. There's Sinead O'Connor over here. She attempted, suicide because of her son dying, something like this. I mean, things are just falling apart. Like it's just the celebrity culture is falling apart. Like we think about Alec and all this stuff, right? And it's 2022 when things are getting realer. Like they got real in 2020, then realer in 2021, and now they're really getting reals. And it's just going to continue in this way. Here's Jojo Magoo, right? And he's acknowledging he's completely failing. And he says this.
It is, there's a lot of talk about disappointments and things we haven't gotten done. We're going to get a lot of them done, I might add.
No, you're not. Right now, he has the House and the Senate. Are both Democrat. I don't know why it's going this way. There's two people, Manchin and Sinema, who are against his whatever he's trying to do here. And, there's this woman said that she should fire up the jet. I don't know if you heard this woman. I'm not going to play it, but she's a pundit. He should fire up the jet and go down to Arizona and campaign against them. I think Manchin's retiring. But there was cooler heads that said, he's going to get creamed in the midterms. It's going to be a Republican House and a Republican Senate. And so that's it for his agenda, like all the things he promised. And, the big money people don't want it, right? And so, like, he's just so clueless here. And he said he's going to get it done, but he's like, then he says this.
But this is something we did get done.
We did get something done.
And it's of enormous consequence to the country.
And so he's got his whole, this infrastructure bill. He's got all these bridges that need repairing. But, his presidency is lost. How unpopular or popular, this thing goes back and forth. So this is 538, and they take, all these polls. And, back here, I'm not sure when this was. It was in the summer of August. It's sort of switched, right? So he had better approval rating. And then kablowy in August, people started to get bummed. And now you can see it's going this way, right? And so he has an approval rating of 42%. I think that's probably inflated. I can't believe there's 42% of the people are that, like, dopey. And 51% disapprove. And he's got nothing. Like, he just did speeches about how Trump, he's trying to revisit the event from last year, all these things. And it's not working for him. Like, it's, my mouse is moving on its own. And so, he look at the approval rate he had on day 4, right? 36 disapprove and 53. I mean, the big jump here is that it went from 36 to 51, right? That's the bigger jump, is the disapproval jump. That's almost a 20-point jump, and it's just going to get worse, right? And things are just going to get worse in the world. I said this. Whoever won the presidency was going to be in charge of the going out of business sale. That is, the American sell-off, right? And so, this is what's happening here. Britney Spears denies holding scum sister Jamie Lynn in a room with a knife. I don't really need to say anything more about this. The book that Jamie Lynn wrote because, she's, maybe needs a little bit of cash grab. There's Britney looking crazy. And then Jamie Lynn went on a show and said Britney held her when she was like, young, 15, 60 or something, in a room at knife point. Britney denies it. Who knows what's really true, but it's crazy in Britney land, and it always is, right? She wrote a long Twitter post about it, and they're just, getting into it in ways that only a dysfunctional Hollywood Disney family could do. A lot of drama. And if anything comes of this, I've covered this before, so I'm just mentioning it here. But here's the other piece to this. The Manning family signs sports betting partnership with Caesars. And if you've seen these commercials, if you watch anything on sports, this guy's an actor and a comedian. And the Manning brothers are in it, as well, the whole Manning family. And they're pushing Caesars online sports book, right? Which is, you can bet on particularly football and things like that, sports, through an online app, right? And Caesars is a big casino, and they've realized there's big money in this. Now, I've covered this before. The whole NFL, which is huge, right? The whole NFL, the whole football season is, it's massive. And the Super Bowl is one of the biggest, holiday type events in our country and even, globally. And you think about all the money that's there in football, it's a $20 billion industry. It's per year, it generates $20 billion in ticket sales and TV, and with the TV contracts, the massive amount of merch, right? Football jerseys and things like this. It is a $20 billion industry. The betting alone, and I covered this years ago, it's probably even more so. I covered this 3 or 4 years ago. The betting alone is $80 billion. Think about this. The betting on football is $80 billion. And so football itself only generates $20 billion. And so now you have athletes who are promoting online betting, even though that used to be like a taboo, right? Pete Rose was banned from baseball for betting on baseball, right? And so betting and the athletes is supposed to never mix. But the Manning brothers have joined with Caesars. And then they had the audacity to make this commercial for Caesars.
When you're a quarterback, maintaining control is critical. Control of the clock, control of the game.
We want you to enjoy Caesars Sportsbook app, and we wish you success.
The Caesars Sportsbook app has the tools to help you set time limits, deposit limits, and spin limits. Please use them.
Who's going to do that, right? You can do it. You can set spending limits so you don't spend too much. But listen to this right here.
And if you are ever struggling to control your gambling, please seek help and support by dialing 1-800-522-4700.
For you gambling addicts, we want you to use the app, but just use it responsibly.
You are all Caesars, and even Caesars need to know their limits.
You're all a Caesar. You're all a Caesar, but even Caesars need to know their limits. So look at these clowns, right? You're a part of, you're a crack dealer now. Gambling is brutal. There's an addiction, right? There's a character in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthira, who is he's the head of the Pandavas family, and he's going to be the king, after the Mahabharata, right? He is destined to be king. He's the wisest of the heroes, the Pandavas. He's the oldest brother, and he's just, his father is Dharma, the god of Dharma or whatever, the cosmic functionary of duty, right? He's just like a great leader and has all the great character qualities a leader needs. But he has a gambling problem. And his uncle, who's on the other side, can mentally manipulate the dice, right? So they play this dice game. They have, some sort of ancient dice game they play. And the guy can make the dice with his mind do whatever they want. And so he cheats Yudhishthira, who can't stop gambling. He gambles away himself as a slave, his brother's wife and all of his brothers. He gambles them away into slavery, everything that they own, because they have a kingdom. They have their own kingdom, and he gambles it all away, right? So this guy is supposed to be the pinnacle of morality and duty and dharma and all these things, but he has a gambling problem. And so, people's lives are ruined by gambling. Throw away all their money, and gambling is rigged, right? The system is rigged against you. The odds are rigged against you. If you bet football, you win $5 and you lose $6, right? So if you break even, if you're right half the time and you're wrong half the time, you're still going to lose money because the system is rigged in the bookie's favor. This is the bookie. These guys are the bookie, right? It's like saying to a crackhead, it's like a crack dealer saying to a crackhead, yeah, don't get addicted. You should put some limits on your crack habit, right? Smoke crack responsibly. It's that level of addiction. Gambling is a very powerful addiction. And these guys are now on the dealer, right? They're drug dealers. They're crack dealers. They're on the dealer end of the thing. They've joined Caesars, right? These are 3 former quarterbacks, right? This is Archie Manning. He was a quarterback when I was a kid. Quarterback. And these are the Manning brothers, who you're probably more familiar with, right? And so they've decided to make money off of people's gambling addiction and this massive amount of money that's being spent in sports betting. You don't get to take the high road. You're scum now, right? Like Britney Spears says about her sister. You're scum. You're gambling. You're bookie scum, right? You're preying on people's weakness because they're just giving their money away. When people gamble, they're just giving their money away. You're going to win some of the time, but in the end, everyone's going to lose. Like it's rigged against you. It's as most rigged as anything else. It's the political system and all the other aspects of things rigged. Gambling is rigged even more. The odds are against you, and so when you gamble, mathematically, you're saying I want to lose. Like as soon as you bet something, you're saying I want to lose money. I just want to give my money away to some seedy M&Fers, and these guys are now a part of it. You don't get to take the high road. You don't get to pretend that, that you're taking the high road. So this brings me to Kanye West, who is one of my favorite celebrities. Kanye West goes after Pete Davidson, new rap, Easy. God save me from that crash so I could beat Pete Davidson's ass. That's a rap line. It showed up on Twitter. It's not very, the audio is horrible. But he said this thing. Now, I saw this drama going on Page 6. And I've said before that, I've made a video that Kanye makes everything better. I found my compilation from a previous video in ways Kanye makes everything better. I'm leaving out the part where I read 27 of his funny tweets, but that's somewhere out there, maybe in one of my privatized videos. But there's multiple times that Kanye has made me laugh and where, he's just made some situation that sucked in the show, the so-called show, better. So here's the compilation. But, I don't remember a situation where Kanye didn't make the show better, right? I call this the show. Everything that we watch, celebrity culture, movies, TV, sports, politics, all of it is a show, right? It is a grand show. And Kanye always makes the show better when he shows up. Remember when he made the VMAs better by doing this?
Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm going to let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Remember that? That was like, the highlight of the MTV Music Awards. I mean, I don't watch that show. I watch this. I enjoy this part, though, right? When he snatched the mic from Taylor Swift. That was great, right? He made the show better when he showed up. Remember this? I was here for this. I didn't watch it live, but it was one of those boring fundraiser, celebrity fundraiser shows for Hurricane Katrina. And then this happened.
In thriving neighborhoods.
I hate the way they portray us in the media. If you see a black family, it says they're...
It's the best is this guy's expression because Kanye's not reading the cue cards.
Complain about I would be a hypocrite because I've tried to turn away from the TV because it's too hard to watch. I've even been shopping before even giving a donation. So now I'm calling my business manager right now to see what is the biggest amount I can give, fighting another way. And they've given them permission to go down and shoot us.
Are you finished? He's touching his nose. Get him out of here.
And subtle, but in even many ways more profoundly devastating, is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to read. Mississippi may end up being the...
He's speed reading, right?
The most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Tell me that didn't make that show 100 times better, right? Every time Kanye shows up, it gets better. Him running for president, I don't know what it means. I just know it's going to be better. When Kanye's there, it's better. That's how the show works, right? When Kanye shows up, when his character shows up, it gets better. Ask Mike Myers.
I've been sent here to give y'all my truth, even at the risk of my own life, even at the risk of my own success, my own career.
So he went, and it was like a similar time in the summer. I think it was in L.A., and he was supposed to be giving a concert. Looks like a packed house, and he just goes on this rant, and then walks off the stage.
I've been sent here to give y'all the truth. Jay-Z called me, bro. You still ain't called me.
Jay-Z isn't calling him.
Jay-Z called me. Hey, bro. Jay-Z, I know you got killers. Please
Jay-Z's got killers.
don't send them at my head. Just call me. Talk to
Don't send killers at his head.
me like a man.
Exactly. You know, Jay-Z's got killers, but there's another option. Kanye gives him another option. Don't send killers at his head. Give him a call. You know, why do you need killers when you have a phone? And so from that, this rant, Kanye walks off the stage and he is sent to a psychiatric rehab center. You guys remember this? And he went into this psych hospital for, I don't know, a week or so. Reprogramming center, some have called it. Kanye experiences memory loss, dyes his hair platinum blonde. You guys remember that? Came out blonde. Oftentimes these celebrities go into a reprogramming facility and, you know, they come out blonde. Just to do a little recap of the character that is Kanye West, it starts off with him being a songwriter for various artists, rap artists, and then he decides, well, he's going to perform. And he became the most successful rap artist for a period of time. He was the #1 rap artist, and even though he wasn't the best rapper, and then he came out and he created a fashion line. It's kind of ghoulish and overpriced and pretentious, but the fashion industry took him seriously. Then after marrying reality TV royalty, he opens up his own church, and he's very successful at being a pastor. And so this is, you know, any one of these things would be enough for most people, but not Kanye. And then before that, he announces that he was diagnosed with being bipolar, and it wasn't a disability. It's what makes him a superhero. He included that on a couple of tracks in his one of his albums. And then if that wasn't enough, he decides he wants to run for president. He shows up at one campaign rally event, wears a bulletproof vest, goes off, talks about how his dad wanted to abort him, and how he wanted to abort his now 7-year-old daughter. Just announces this in public, breaks down in tears, causing his wife to storm off, and he almost gets divorced. He heads up to Montana, where he eventually ends up in rehab again. And, you know, it's like he came out of some sort of reprogramming center. And so that was some of the compilation how Kanye makes the show better. Now there's this thing going on where Pete Davidson's with Kim Kardashian, and I don't really cover these Hollywood relationships because they're all fake unless there's, you know, something different about them. Like I don't cover the, you know, official story. There's some reason that it's different. But he went after Kanye on Saturday Night Live.
Talk about Kanye, but we discussed it, you know, because Jay's black, but like I'm crazy, and we both know which side of Kanye is at the wheel right now.
And so I'm going to get into this with John Oliver in a moment, the fake laughter. And so Pete Davidson called him crazy because after Kanye was a musical guest the week before, he held everybody hostage and he put on a MAGA hat and he went on a rant, right? Pete Davidson describes it here.
What it looked like. So like, that inspires me. I'm like on the left. I'm like, oh God.
So he went on this rant with the Make America Great Again hat, and Pete Davidson said, "Oh man," and then he walked off the stage, and then he talked about Kanye. Because Kanye said his bipolar disorder was his superpower, which was great, hilarious, right? And then he went off his meds, and Pete Davidson said,
"Oh, thanks, guys." But like Kanye, I know you're like, "Yo, this is the real me. I'm off the meds." Take them.
Then he goes on a long rant about how you should always take your meds, right? That he's taking them, he's on meds, and he's taking them. So this was, you know, something, if you know Kanye, would make him angry, right? And Pete Davidson was definitely mocking him through a 3-minute and 51 second segment on Saturday Night Live. And now, apparently he's banging Kanye's ex-wife, and so there's that, right? Kim Kardashian upset over Kanye's claim she's keeping him from his kids. You can't keep Kanye from his kids. Kanye West makes it to daughter Chicago's party after blasting Kardashian. So he said something, y'all, I'm wishing my daughter a public happy birthday. I wasn't allowed to know where her party was. And so there was that, right? So apparently he showed up, and there's Kim Kardashian's mom fully masked up around Kanye. She doesn't want to be. There he is. And there's his daughter, Chicago. He also has a kid named Psalm. And northwest, right? And so he helps her break the piñata like Kanye do. This is from before Nothing Will Keep Me From My Children. So this is getting good because Kanye is getting triggered. And when Kanye gets triggered, there's lots of laughs to be had. And so we'll see how this plays out. So here's the main reason I'm making this video. This is what I most want to cover. John Oliver is suddenly very angry about one key point in the Da Vinci Code. So I saw this headline in Huffington Post, and John Oliver sucks, and he hammered the truth community in another video. I show you the clip about that a long time ago, and he's been doing it more recently. But he is just an out-and-out, just annoying, not funny. Another one of these comedians that's turned into somebody who inserts themselves in the news media, even though he has no journalistic training, and he sucks as a comedian, and he's not even an American, right? So I saw this headline. I was wondering if he was going after the truther community, but what I found in the video was much better. His absolute cluelessness and his inability to self-perceive in a way that totally shows you how clueless people in Hollywood are. So it starts off, this is an edition, it's just on the web. It's not on his show from HBO. And he starts off by talking this way, and there's an obvious laugh track.
Our show is on hiatus right now, so I'm coming to you straight from YouTube, the world's most dystopian video hellscape before TikTok. And
now that's a fake laugh, right? So he doesn't make real good jokes. That's as high quality jokes as he made, right?
I'm here because I want to talk about something near and dear to my, let's say, heart, and that is the Da Vinci Code.
So listen to the fake laugh here. He says Da Vinci Code, and that's not a joke, but they put a fake laugh in anyway.
Let's say heart, and that is the Da Vinci Code. The 2000.
Why laugh there? That wasn't a joke. They just insert these ridiculous. He's got a live audience, and he can't generate laughs, so they have to put laugh tracks in there. Uncomfortable laughs.
Dan Brown novel about solving art crimes hornily, and as to why you're talking about this book 18 years after its release. I think it's...
See, it's not too hard to tell there's a laugh track. I don't know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You have to be just a little bit aware to see that there's a laugh track in pretty much all these live shows because they're not funny and they can't generate any sort of real laughter. And then he talks about his audience, right?
That the studio audience did not sign up to be here for this. They thought...
Another fake laugh, right? That's not the audience laughing.
They were attending a normal taping of this show and not what up to this point has been a mostly jokeless summary of the plot of 2003's The Da Vinci Code. So if you're
another fake laugh, right?
Sensing any kind of tension in their confused, tepid...
We don't sense anything from the audience because you're using a laugh track, right? We're not getting a human reaction here. We're getting a mechanical laugh track reaction. He's making it sound like his audience is emoting and you can hear them. No, we can't because you're playing a laugh track over any response that they're given.
And sometimes irritated responses. Just know, you're probably right. They're not even allowed to look at their phones, and they won't be able to do that for a while.
And so there's just all this as above, so below here. So he's in the studio getting a studio response, but we're hearing a laugh track. And so the cluelessness of it, that his show is is so like, not funny, that in all these shows, he's just one of many, they have to play these laugh tracks because they can't generate a positive human response. But then he's going to show you just how clueless he is. Like, he doesn't have the ability to self-perceive as he talks about this Da Vinci Code plot hole. He's talking about the Robert Langdon character in the book and also in the movie, that one of the main clues is this.
That begins, in London lies a knight, a pope interred, his labour's fruit, a holy wrath incurred. Now, we quickly find out the knight in question is Sir Isaac Newton.
So this is one of the big mysteries in the film. I didn't read the book, but, same thing. And, it's pivotal to the plot.
So, Isaac Newton, labour's fruit. You're thinking apple, right? Apple. It's your first guess, and it's also your only guess, and you're right, because it's apple. No one should need Robert Langdon, a Harvard educated...
And so he's making the point that was enough of a clue, right? That any kind of fruit associated with Newton is going to be an apple. And the holy wrath incurred was the church being upset at Newton bringing science into, the godly pursuit and confronting things that were in the Bible, right, with the idea of the law of gravity. And so he's saying that this clue was sufficient for you to know as an audience member. This is where it gets really good. Because he doesn't even realize he's talking about his own crappy laugh track infested show, and all the mainstream media and all these shill comedians, in their remedial presentation to the stupid.
Puzzle solver who to get to the bottom of this. A child could solve that puzzle, and yet the poem continues. You seek the orb.
So he's really upset now, right? He's getting upset by how easy this is to solve, but they give you more of a clue because the audience is so dumbed down.
Ought be on the tomb. It speaks of rosy flesh and seeded womb. So orb, rosy flesh,
See, like how, animated he's getting.
It's apple, isn't it? It's apple. Guess how many pages there are between that poem and the solution to the puzzle. I'll give you a clue. It's a lot more than one.
And so what he's saying is that this is an easily solvable puzzle, and you don't need this, expert symbologist to solve it for you, right? It's an apple. And look at how animated he's getting. And this is how we all feel when we watch his show or we watch CNN.
Both the book and the movie make it seem like only the brilliant Robert Langdon could possibly decode the mystery behind those complex words. Here is this.
Like, think about how this is for us all the time when we're watching these shills, right? That are pandering to the stupid, right? To the dummies of the world. And it's just getting, in terms of the content, it's getting more and more targeted at stupider and, more clueless, unawake people.
Scene in the movie version where he explains the solution like he's Indiana Jones finding the Ark of the Covenant to a speechless and awestruck Amelie.
There was every orb conceivable on that tomb except one. The orb which fell from the heavens and inspired Newton's life's work that incurred the wrath of the church.
He's right about this. This is a major plot flaw. I'm not saying he's wrong. Like, this is something where he's actually found something, but he doesn't understand he's talking about himself and, and everybody like him.
Until his dying day. A-P-P-L-E. Apple.
And so this is how we feel when we see all this media presentation. We see these comedians like him and Kimmel's and all these shills telling us stuff that only stupid people, like, I'd use a different word here, but you have to be like brain dead and just completely clueless to believe the stuff that he's pushing out. Like his frustration with this movie, and he's totally clueless, his remedial presentation. This is how I feel when I turn TV on all the time. Like, I can't believe that, the presentation, especially news media or people talking about the show that we can easily see through, and they're presenting stuff that can only be targeted at people who are completely unconscious, who have, given up on life and are, have double-digit IQs and just can't grasp even the most, smallest plot hole, all the flaws and lies. Like when you turn on the news or any of these mainstream programs or politics, these people are so fake. They're not real people. They're not acting like real people. They don't act the way real people do. And then there's just so much obvious flaws in the logic of whatever they're presenting. And it just follows all these patterns, right? We all fall for things. Everybody gets tricked in their life. Everybody gets conned. Everyone gets played to whatever degree. And we all get sucked into illusions and drama and things. So I'm not even saying it like I don't understand how people can fall for things. But in this case, it's gotten so obvious, and they're not even trying to appeal to smart people. People with critical thinking skills, they're not trying to win you over. They are just going full dummy. It's the year of the dummy, and everything they do is to go after the dummy. You look at John Oliver's show, and it's so like remedial. It's just you have to be brain dead to watch it, and not just his show, but all these late night comedians. It's gotten that bad. I think most of us see it, most people in the truth community, and yet he's flipping out over this obvious plot hole because anybody should know he's talking about an apple, right? So what he's saying is true, but he can't see it the way that this is how we look at his show. This is how anybody who's awake a little bit and, is aware and isn't in some doped up, self-imposed slumber would look at his show, right? Like you can see the things coming a mile away. You know exactly what they're going to say. Even before I click on the link to some of these things with any of these late night comedians or the news hosts, I know exactly what they're going to say. We've seen it. We've read their playbook over and over again. It's so obvious, and this is how we feel. Like, and he doesn't get it, and the rest of these people don't get it. Like, he's like upset that they put such a ridiculously easily solvable puzzle in the end of the movie, right? And the book. And that's what it's like. It's like paint by numbers type of comedy and news. Like anybody with any consciousness knows where things are going. We all know how it's going to end up. We know what they're going to say. We know what they're paid to say. We know what they're going to shill for. And so that's that. So I watched this movie called Alien Nation. I watched it over like several nights, just little bits and pieces of it, right? And I had seen the movie years and years ago. It was from the 90s. I had forgot all about it. It stars James Caan, who plays the same grumpy character. I used to like James Caan because he plays the same grumpy character. He was Sonny, the hot-headed son in the first Godfather movie, right? It's just somebody who's very violent and hot-headed. And then he played this same character in Elf and numerous other movies, including this movie, where he teams up with an alien, like these extraterrestrials. Ship shows up on Earth, and it's full of slaves, these aliens that somehow have escaped or whatever's happened to them, and they're slave laborers, right? They were bred to be slaves, which is interesting because I talk about that in terms of, the human population. And there's this wonderful scene towards the end of the movie. The movie's like pretty good for, a low-budget 90s movie. I mean, there's lots of plot holes, and James Caan does a lot of stupid things like he always does. He's not really Italian. He played he plays a lot of Italian characters, but he's not actually Italian. I'm part Sicilian. Like, I don't care about it. But you would think he was Italian for all the characters he plays. But anyways, there's this very telling scene towards the end of the movie.
The drug is called Jabruka. It is a potent narcotic. How potent? More potent than any human drug you can imagine.
That's the multi-talented actor Mandy Patinkin. I know he's multi-talented because my brother had an album of Mandy Patinkin doing some sort of music stuff. But anyways, Mandy plays one of these aliens that he knows that this drug, if the humans found out about the drug and what could the monsters that they could become and all of it, that it would destroy the harmony that they now share living on this new planet with these Earthlings, right?
The controllers regulated it. We would receive small amounts as a reward for our labor in the mines.
Who are these controllers that you speak of?
We were genetically engineered as slave laborers. It was our only means of pleasure, allowed. The harder you worked, the more you got. The more you got, the harder you worked.
This is something that I have talked about quite a bit. Like, I'd forgotten all about this movie. I use the term controllers, right? That's how I describe the people that run the system. But, of course, I talk about the divine hierarchy that are, you know, in charge of administering God's will on this planet as well, which, of course, these movies don't talk about that. But anyways, interesting, because I talk about the human race being genetically modified slaves, and there's this narrative that I agree with, that I talk about quite a bit, and, you know, all of it, right? But anyways, the year of the dummy is in full swing, the need for deeper connection to God. I mean, you can see everything starting to spiral downhill. Biden's presidency is falling apart. The narratives are falling apart. People are now more and more waking up because their lifestyle is now becoming in jeopardy, and people are losing their freedoms or whatever privileges that they thought that they were guaranteed. And so the need to connect to God and find a better path is even more prevalent now. Talk about that later. A couple other videos maybe to make today, or, you know, some of these things I'll wrap up tomorrow. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paravato. Definitely reporting from the Apocalaughs. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.